So I don't think you guys can appreciate how bright it is. I can't see everyone. First of all, I want to thank Al. Al has been a pioneer in our community talking about the issues that affect us every single day. And he has helped shape the perception and the mobilization that is needed to ensure that we are strong and healthy. When I was talking earlier about this idea of why corruption is one of the things that are the biggest cancers in our society, is oftentimes one of the primary reasons why our families fled their country of origin. And it's because we know that here we are able to actually participate and engage in a capitalist democracy. And I say a capitalist democracy because there's a lot of this talk of whether or not there's a question of what we believe in. But in a thriving capitalist democracy, we have to be able to ensure that everybody has an equal playing field. And I would say that an FDR Democrat of the last century ensured that there were social programs in place for folks that were born in a poor zip code. And now we need to kind of do the same thing. How do we actually acknowledge that there is disparities and inequities through this idea, though, that we all have to pitch in to have a thriving next generation of Americans who are disproportionately brown and disproportionately Latino? Young voters for baby boomers. For the very first time in 2020, young people are going to be larger voting bloc potential than baby boomers. Since the last election, 12 million young people have turned 18. 2/3 of them, young people of color, 4 million of them, Latino youth. That's potential. In the 2018 election, when people were saying Latinos were not going to turn out, not only did we turn out, we turned out despite no one talking to us. 49% of eligible Latino voters never received a political contact from a candidate or a party. 49% of those registered. However, 2.5 million Latinos heard the messaging, were concerned, got up, and voted early. 11% of the electorate for the very first time were Latino in a midterm election. 28% of the voters were young voters. 25% of them were first-time voters. So when people tell you that Latinos don't vote, that's absolute nonsense. The problem in the Latino community is that we have a voter registration gap. So in 2016, we had roughly, this is 2018, but it's actually 2016, we had 29 eligible voters. In 2020, we're going to have 32 million eligible voters. 16 million of us are registered, 15 million of us are unregistered. 15 million. 10 million of them are young people, 34 or younger. 60% of Latinos are under the age of 33. So oftentimes we're trying to figure out what's happening in the demographics. The majority of Americans white Americans are 54 years old. The majority of Latinos are 19 years old. We're new, we're young. We don't have the infrastructure that we need to compete, but we have savvy, we like to chat, we like to convince folks, and we love to share information. And that is going to be our strength to build the power that we need for the 2020 elections. There's been a lot of talk about the citizenship question, whether or not we should do it. What was the genesis behind it? 16 million Americans live in mixed status families, meaning that one person in their family is undocumented. The Department of Commerce tried to explain that they needed to know the citizenship question because they wanted to ensure our voting rights. But in fact, what they found on a deceased GOP operative who wrote the memo on why they wanted the citizenship question was to be advantageous to Republicans and non-Hispanic whites and a disadvantage to the Democrats. I don't care about the disadvantage to the Democrats. What they were interested in creating were gerrymandered districts that were Republican, non-Hispanic whites. They recognized that our population boom could disenfranchise a group of individuals that have to compete fairly for our population. The reason I highlight this is because this is policy set by our government to disenfranchise our vote. And regardless of what party you're in, that's unacceptable. Because in a capitalist democracy, it is a democracy because of maximum participation, and you compete for our vote fairly and squarely. I'm going to share with you the manifesto of the El Paso shooter. This is attack in response to Hispanic invasion of Texas. I'm not going to read the second part because I'm less interested in it. It helps remove the threat of the Hispanic voting bloc. I have family in El Paso. My kids were playing in that same mall 2 days before the shooter. El Paso is considered the safest city in the country, and it's 85% Latino. This individual jumped in his car and drove 10 hours to send a message. Because in Texas, every community has a Latino community. He had someone in his backyard, but he decided he wanted to send a maximum message. And what I'm asking you today is that we have to stand up as a Latino community first and show and flex our muscles, because right now, they're expecting us to sit by the sidelines. They're expecting us to cower. And I can tell you that if any of you have a mother like I do, la lucha es nosotras. We know how to fight because nothing was ever given to us. And they're creating a ring that we understand very well. And that means that what we need to do is prepare, 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 because the numbers and potential are with us. But we need everybody's help in this room. Let me go back to that one slide. So this was basically the 2018 election, the 2016 election with 270 electoral votes. Republicans won by 306, Democrats lost by 332. 270 is the magic number. These are the percentages of Latinos in each of these states. The purple states are the ones that are flippable, and then the blue states are the ones that have gone solidly blue. In Texas, you have 29% of the Latino electoral base, 29%. Florida is 18%, Arizona is 23%, Pennsylvania is 5%, North Carolina is 3.5%, and we could go down. Texas alone has 2.5 unregistered Latinx youth. Arizona has 300,000 unregistered youth. The reason that's important is that in Texas, the lowest voting propensity state in the country, up to last year, it went from 50 to 41, where out of every 5 voters, 2 were Latino. We had never seen that. And in Texas, for the very first time, 1 out of 5 voters were young voters. They happened to be the same person. And it's because what's happening in Texas is very similar to what happened in California during Proposition 187. How many folks are here from California? I grew up in California. I'm from Sonoma, proud Californian, UC Davis Aggie. And I have to tell you that Proposition 187 put a chill through the Latino community. We had conversations in our households. My family went from being mostly legal residences to American citizens over a conversation that we had at Thanksgiving dinner. That conversation was happening through millions of households in California. And even though that time was of fear, being uncomfortable, being challenged, and figuring out whether or not this is the country that you thought it was, we organized, we engaged, we flexed our power. In California, the Latino found respeto. When you look at our legislations, whether it's Javier Becerra, whether it's Alex Padilla, whether it's Ricardo Lara, we need to bring more females into it. They politicized a group of Latinos that we'd never seen before. And we need to make sure that we're doing this exact same thing right now, because sadly, what's happening across the country in niches of Texas and in Florida, North Carolina, we already experienced in California. But we know what to do. We need to have conversations with our families. We have to register ourselves, because we need to look back 25 years ago of where we were in California and how we were able to change that tide. This is a little bit of our work in a nutshell. Voto Latino, we started when I was in the age group. And the whole idea was to engage young Latinos to participate because we knew that they were the ones that were translating America for their families. How many folks in this room are first-generation Americans? About a third. How many are the first in your families to go to college? About 2/3. That's the group that we target disproportionately. In 2018, we registered 202,000 registered voters. 98% of them were registered through digital channels because we deeply believe that we get into the nooks and crannies of young Latinos, and not only do they participate, but then they start sharing their friends information and getting them to participate as well. We increased our voter registration from 17% from a presidential cycle. So it tells us that people are paying attention and they have an appetite. And our average cost for voter registration was $11.36. We're very metrics driven at Voto Latino. We were able to better our voter registration by 76 cents from the cycle before. And these are some of the numbers. When we started in 2014, we registered 51,221. That year, we did tests. We wanted to know what messages worked, who was the right person to tell that, what channels should we be using, and you can see that we've applied it immediately to the 2016 election because I will share with you what we spent in 2014 was the same amount of money that we spent in 2016. We got really good at what we do. And one of the innovations that we did and we put in everybody's hands last year was Voter Pal. Voter Pal allows you to register your friends and family. It was named by Apple as one of the top political apps in the Apple Store last year. When we created it with this idea of making it as easy as possible to register. You basically it scans the back of your driver's license and it pre-populates it for you. We expected that only the nerdy kids were going to use it. We're like, about 3 people would download it. It was downloaded by 1,000 people. We expected about each person to register 3 people to vote. In fact, they were registering closer to 10. It was responsible for 10% of our voter registration. And if we can get that into the hands of so many people, our voter registration costs can go from less than $10. We can drive the cost down to ideally $1 or $2. But that's where we need you. These are a little bit of our turnout rates, how we did it. So the yellow one is what the general populations were turning out. You'll notice that in Texas, 67% of the Latino population turned out in Texas. 74% of the people we registered turned out in Texas. 78% of the people we registered turned out in Pennsylvania compared to 71%. Our numbers are quite high. In fact, 77% of the people we registered turned out to vote. And that is basically when you're talking about a margin election, when people are literally winning Virginia state houses by 1 vote, that makes all the difference. I won't get too much into that. One of the things that we know is that Latino youth care particularly about 4 things. They care about the environment, they care about health, immigration, and gun violence. When we talk about health, it's one of the few issues that the Latino young people community share with the average 54-year-old white voter. And it's because many of these young people are considered a sandwich generation early. If their parents get hurt on the job, their life gets immediately impacted. They have to decide, can they still go to school? Do they need another job? Because they have to take care of their mommy. And this is an opportunity to have, again, connective conversations with individuals. This is our vision for 2020. Voto Latino is among the top 10 voter registration programs in 36 states. However, we only invested in 11 states. But our brand and our ability to provide people with information that they can use, the fact that they trust the brand, tells us that while we're investing in 11 states, we can actually scale in any of the 36 states quite quickly, and we can register and we can turn them out. One of the things that we're looking to do specifically at Voto Latino is last year our goal was to register 200,000. Our goal this year is to register 500,000 Latino voters, again in these concentrated states, but we need to start early. Right now we're running two Virginia program and a Texas program, again, to get better at the online digital platforms, to better understand what's hitting. But we deeply believe that we can register 500,000 by starting January 1. We can't wait. We need our army. We need to flex. And the reason January 1 is so important is that by March 17th of 2020, 70% of eligible Latino voters will be able to choose who their candidates are in the primary. That's huge. But it's not enough for us to register and to vote. I deeply believe that we also start having in the back pocket a list of demands to ensure that when whoever gets into office, they were there because we registered, we participated, we got them there. We need to have a list of demands of what the community is going to need to continue to thrive. So basically, there's three key ways to invest. In June, we're looking at basically doing data modeling stuff that we're sharing. Basically, September, we're building out our programs that I shared with you, and then voter registration. But how can you all help? One, you can download VoterPal. I was given on a good source, there's about 1,000 people in this room. If 10 of you register, if you each registered 10 folks, that's 10,000 voters. When you look at the majority of the elections last year that were won by less than 5%, we're talking about winning congressional elections with less than 900 votes. So right here, your 10,000 voters ended up helping win am I doing it right? My math right? Yeah, five districts. The Virginia State House, when someone says my vote didn't matter, the Virginia State House literally last year in 2017 was decided on a coin toss because one party had one vote more than the other party, a coin toss. The other thing you could do is participate in National Voter Registration Day. Voto Latino was, when we were scrappier about 6 years ago, we created a national holiday that allowed corporations, every individuals, civic participation organizations to basically participate in our democracy. The last voter registration day just happened just this past Tuesday. The first time off the bat, we had MSNBC, we had Viacom, we had MTV. We also had different, had different organizations. And the first time off the bat, because we collectively grew our resources, we registered 300,000 people in one single day. This past year, it was almost 1 million. So if you have an organization or a business, a bodega, you can participate by sending an email to your clients to just get them enfranchised. And we can provide you all that information as a partner. And then the other one is to partner more formally with Voto Latino and invest in us. Well, Al was saying that we need to do investments to build our political power. One of the things that we often forget is that no one is investing in the Latino community at scale as they should. Less than 2% of all philanthropic dollars go to the Latino community across the board. Not just for civic engagement, but for the arts, for mental health, you go down the list. In the 2016 presidential election, it was a $2 billion election. The Latino community received less than $15 million to register the second largest group of Americans that are eligible to vote. If every single Latino had pitched in $1, that would have been a $60 million war chest. That's transformative. The only way that we're going to be at the table and not on the menu is for us to ensure that we are building the infrastructure that we need, that we're registering our friends and family, that we're having honest conversations of what's going on in this country. Because the only reason they fear us is because they see our potential. And we should stop having to demonstrate and tell people why we're here, because we know what we're here for. We're here to grow, to contribute, to be the best version of ourselves, and because we deeply believe in this country. We have to do this unapologetically. We have to flex our muscle unapologetically, because when we show up, there's nothing that we cannot do. And I go back to my abuela when she says, no is for everybody else. It reminds me in the Latino community, no matter how uncomfortable we may get into these spaces, the one thing that we know is la lucha, family, love, y patria. So I hope that you not only enjoy the rest of the conversations today, but really look inside each other and say, look, this group has potential access to change the map, to find and remind people of why we came here, and do so unapologetically. Thank you so much.